Have you ever had one of those days where everything feels like it's piling up, where the weight of self-doubt presses down on your chest and anxiety whispers that you're not enough? Maybe it's a missed deadline, a harsh comment that stuck with you, or just the relentless noise of your own inner critic. We've all been there. But what if I told you that the answer to quieting that storm inside you isn't some modern self-help hack? It's a philosophy that's been tested for over 2,000 years. Stoicism, the ancient practice embraced by emperors and thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, offers more than just lofty ideas. It gives us real, gritty tools to reclaim our mental clarity and strength. In his words, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That's the heart of what we're exploring today: how to apply Stoic principles to disarm anxiety, silence self-doubt, and build unshakable resilience in the chaos of everyday life. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending life is perfect. It's about training your mind to meet challenges with calm, focus, and most importantly, control. By the end of this video, you'll walk away with practical techniques to reframe negative thoughts, steady your emotions, and cultivate a mindset that doesn't just endure life's ups and downs but thrives through them. So if you're ready to transform the way you face stress and uncertainty, let's begin. When was the last time you felt your stomach tighten over something you couldn't change? Maybe it was a sudden downpour ruining your outdoor plans, or a friend canceling last-minute circumstances entirely outside your hands. Stoicism cuts through the noise of anxiety with a razor-sharp distinction. Suffering begins when we pour energy into things we can't command. The ancient teacher Epictetus put it plainly: some things are within our power while others are not. Your thoughts, your choices, your efforts, these are your domain. The traffic jam, the weather, someone else's opinion, those belong to the category Stoics called indifference, not good or bad in themselves, but neutral until we assign them meaning. Picture two commuters stuck in the same gridlock. One white knuckles the wheel, muttering about wasted time, heart racing. The other takes a deep breath, turns on a podcast, and accepts the delay. The difference isn't the external event, it's which parts of the experience each chooses to engage with. Anxiety thrives when we blur this line, reacting to life's unpredictability as if we should have been able to prevent it. Try this: grab a sheet of paper and jot down 3 things gnawing at you right now. Now ask yourself honestly, how much direct control you actually have over each. That space between what happens and how you respond, that's where your power lies. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with rocks labeled other people's opinions, tomorrow's weather, and whether the train will be late. Heavy, right? This is what we do to ourselves when we confuse what's truly ours to carry. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who wrote letters on finding tranquility, had a simple solution: sort the rocks. In one pile, place what you control, your focus, your attitude, your actions. In the other, everything else. That division is the heart of the dichotomy of control, and it's your first step toward lighter shoulders and a quieter mind. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly: accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart. In other words, pour yourself into what's yours to shape and release the rest. Take a job interview. You can research the company, practice your answers, even pick your outfit. But the final decision, that belongs to someone else. Obsessing over it is like shouting at the rain to stop, exhausting and pointless. Effort is your territory, outcomes are not. So pause for a moment. What's that one weight in your backpack right now? The thing gnawing at you that, if you're honest, sits firmly outside your hands. Naming it and then setting it down isn't resignation. It's the act of reclaiming your energy for battles you can actually win. There's a quiet rebellion in the way Stoics face life's curveballs, not with gritted teeth, but with something far more radical: acceptance. Not passive resignation, but a deliberate embrace. The ancient Stoics called this Amor Fati, Latin for love of fate. Centuries later, Friedrich Nietzsche would borrow the phrase, but its roots trace back to thinkers like Epictetus, who saw adversity as raw material for growth. Difficulties show a person's character. When you encounter obstacles, turn them into fuel. Picture a blacksmith tempering steel. The hammer strikes aren't punishments, they're what give the blade its strength. That's Amor Fati in action, recognizing that every setback, every disappointment is part of the craftsmanship of your resilience. Think about a time you poured your heart into a project, maybe a work presentation or creative idea, only to have it fall flat. In the moment, failure stings, but what if you could see it as the universe handing you a chisel, shaping skills you didn't even know you needed, the feedback that stung? It sharpened your communication, the unexpected roadblock, it forced you to innovate. Even the self-doubt that followed, it taught you to question your assumptions. Here's the shift: instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" a question that traps you in resistance, Amor Fati asks, "How is this happening for me?" It's not about pretending hardship doesn't hurt, but about trusting the process enough to lean into the discomfort. So take a moment, recall a challenge from your past, one that felt like a dead end at the time. What hidden strengths did it reveal in you? What doors opened precisely because that first one slammed shut? That's the alchemy of Amor Fati, turning leaden moments into gold. And the more you practice this reframe, the less power anxiety and self-doubt will hold over you, because even in the storm, you'll start to see the rain as something that nourishes, not drowns. What if you could face life's bumps not with fear but with quiet readiness? That's the essence of Premeditatio Malorum, a Stoic practice that translates to the premeditation of evils. Before you recoil at the word evils, let's clarify. This isn't about doom-scrolling through worst-case scenarios or wallowing in negativity. It's about mentally rehearsing challenges so they lose their power to shock you. Seneca put it best: he suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary. Think of it like a fire drill for the mind. When you've already walked through the steps of handling a crisis in your head, the real thing feels less like a catastrophe and more like a situation you're prepared to navigate. Modern life often trains us to avoid discomfort, scrolling past bad news, numbing stress with distractions, or clinging to the hope that everything will go perfectly. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that adversity isn't an if, it's a when. By visualizing setbacks, a missed promotion, a disagreement with a loved one, even a cancelled flight, you're not inviting trouble. You're building emotional calluses. Take something as simple as a tough conversation you've been dreading. Play it out in your mind. What's the worst that could happen? Maybe they react angrily. Maybe you stumble over your words. Now ask, could I handle that? Of course you could. And suddenly, the unknown feels less intimidating because you've already faced it in advance. Here's the twist: Premeditatio Malorum isn't just about preparation, it's about gratitude. When you intentionally imagine losing what you have, your health, your job, even your morning coffee, something extraordinary happens. You return to the present moment with fresh eyes, realizing how much you've taken for granted. It's like that old saying, we don't know what we have until it's gone. Except here, you're not waiting for loss to teach you. You're choosing to see the gift before life reminds you the hard way. So try this. Pick one stressor looming on your horizon. Maybe it's a deadline, a medical appointment, or a family gathering that always tests your patience. Close your eyes and walk through it, not as a victim, but as someone who's already mapped the terrain. How might this shift your relationship to anxiety? How much lighter would you feel if you knew deep down that you've already practiced weathering the storm? That's the Stoic secret. When you stop fearing adversity, you start seeing it as just another part of being alive, and that's when real resilience begins. When did you last pause to truly cherish the simple gifts in your life? Your health, your morning coffee, the sound of a loved one's laughter. We sprint through our days chasing more, better, faster, rarely stopping to appreciate what's already here until it's threatened or gone. Stoics call this practice negative visualization, and it's not about pessimism, it's about peeling away the numbness of habit to reveal the extraordinary in the ordinary. Marcus Aurelius began each morning with a stark reminder: you could leave this life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think, not to dwell on mortality, but to sharpen his focus on the present. Imagine waking up tomorrow to find your phone, that constant companion, gone. No alerts, no endless scroll, just silence. At first, panic might rise, but then you'd notice the birds outside your window, the weight lifted from your pockets, the uninterrupted conversation with a friend. That's the paradox. By mentally surrendering what we cling to, we rediscover its worth. Think of your home, the creaky floorboard, the way sunlight slants across the kitchen in the afternoon. Now picture it vanished. Suddenly, those trivial details become treasures. This exercise isn't meant to scare you, it's designed to awaken you. Anxiety thrives on what-ifs about the future, but negative visualization anchors you in the now by asking a different question: what if I lost this today? The answer doesn't breed fear, it fuels gratitude. Try this. Grab a notebook and list 3 mundane things you'd deeply miss if they disappeared tomorrow. The hum of your fridge, the familiar scent of your pillow, the barista who remembers your order. These are the invisible threads weaving joy into your daily life. Stoics didn't chase grand, fleeting happiness. They cultivated joy in the tangible, the temporary, the overlooked. Because when you train yourself to see the world this way, scarcity loses its grip. You stop agonizing over what you lack and start marveling at what you already hold. Picture Earth from space, a swirling blue marble dotted with clouds, continents barely visible, no borders, no traffic jams, no inbox full of unread emails. From this vantage point, every human worry that ever kept you awake at night shrinks to invisibility. The Stoics called this the view from above, and it's one of their most powerful tools for cutting anxiety down to size. Marcus Aurelius, staring at the same stars we do, wrote, "Think of the vastness of time and how many waves of human drama have risen and crashed your crisis. A speck in the ocean, that's the paradox. Realizing how small we are doesn't diminish our lives, it liberates them. Take that argument with your coworker last week. In the moment, it felt all-consuming. Your pulse raced, your cheeks burned. You replayed their words on loop, but fast forward a year, will it even matter? Or will it be just another forgotten ripple in the stream of your life? This exercise isn't about dismissing your feelings, it's about contextualizing them. Imagine standing at the edge of your own life, looking back. What would your 80-year-old self tell you about the weight you're giving today's stress? They'd likely chuckle and say, "You weathered storms you don't even remember now." Here's the magic of zooming out. It doesn't erase problems, but it strips away their false urgency. That presentation you're agonizing over, however it goes, the sun will rise tomorrow. The rude comment that stung, in a century, no one will recall it, including you. This perspective isn't nihilism, it's clarity. When you see your life as part of something vaster, you stop sweating the small stuff, and almost everything is small stuff. So try this. The next time anxiety starts to spiral, close your eyes. Picture Earth from orbit, silent and majestic. Then go further. See your city as a grid of tiny lights, your neighborhood a blur, your home a pinprick. Whatever's troubling you, ask, will this echo in the cosmos? The answer isn't depressing, it's oddly comforting. Because if your worries don't register on a galactic scale, they don't have to dominate your inner world either. You're free to focus on what truly matters, the handful of people and passions that make your brief, brilliant flicker in time meaningful. Why did Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most powerful leaders, spend his nights scribbling private notes to himself? Those personal reflections, later published as meditations, weren't meant for an audience. They were a mirror, a way to untangle his thoughts and confront his own contradictions. Stoic journaling isn't about crafting perfect prose. It's about taking the messy whirlwind of your mind and laying it bare on the page. Seneca, who wrote letters to friends that doubled as self-therapy, put it this way: when you pour your anxieties into writing, they lose their power to haunt you. Because here's the truth: self-doubt thrives in the shadows of your skull, where fears twist and grow unchecked. But when you drag them into the light of ink and paper, something shifts. Take social anxiety, that moment you replay a conversation, convinced you sounded foolish. On paper, it might look like this: I stumbled over my words at lunch. Now they probably think I'm incompetent, but the act of writing forces you to slow down and ask, is that really true, or is my mind magnifying a tiny moment? Suddenly, you spot the gap between reality and the story you're telling yourself. That's the magic of Stoic journaling. It turns your inner critic into a conversation partner. You're not just feeling the doubt, you're dissecting it. Tonight, try this simple prompt: what did I assume today that wasn't true? Maybe you assumed a colleague's short reply meant they were angry, when really they were just distracted. Maybe you convinced yourself you'd fail a task before even starting it. The goal isn't to judge yourself, it's to catch those automatic thoughts like fish in a net, examine them, and then release the ones that don't serve you. Over time, these pages become a map of your mental habits, revealing patterns you'd never notice otherwise. And the more you practice, the quicker you'll spot self-doubt's tricks before they take root. Your journal isn't a record of your flaws, it's proof of your progress, one honest line at a time. How often are you mentally somewhere else, rehashing yesterday's conversation or scripting tomorrow's to-do list while life unfolds unnoticed in front of you? The Stoics had a word for the antidote: prosaic, a practice of unwavering attention to the present moment. In a world that rewards split-screen focus, scrolling through emails while half listening to a podcast or planning your grocery list during a conversation, prosaic is radical. It's the act of reclaiming your mind from the tug of war between past regrets and future anxieties and planting it firmly here. Epictetus saw this clearly: the present is all you possess. Waste no time arguing what a good person should be one. Translation: stop theorizing about life and start living it. Think about the last meal you ate. Were you tasting each bite, or was your phone in one hand, your thoughts racing through chores? Modern distraction trains us to treat the present as a waiting room, somewhere to endure until the important stuff happens. But anxiety can't thrive when you're fully engaged in now. Try this: next time you wash your hands, feel the water's temperature, notice the soap's scent, hear the sound of it lathering. That's sensory grounding, a simple way to yank your mind back from hypothetical worries and into the tangible world. Here's the irony: we fear future scenarios that may never happen, while ignoring the richness right in front of us. A child's laugh, the weight of a book in your hands, the way sunlight filters through leaves, these aren't just background noise. They're the stuff of life, and they're happening this second. So pause right now. What's one sensation you've been ignoring? The pressure of your feet against the floor, the hum of an appliance you stopped hearing minutes ago. This isn't just mindfulness, it's Stoic warfare against distraction. Every time you anchor yourself in the present, you're stealing power back from the anxieties that thrive on your absence. The future isn't yours to control, but this breath, this moment, that's your territory, and the more you claim it, the quieter the storm inside becomes. What if your inner critic isn't a truth teller, just a faulty algorithm spitting out bad data? self-doubt thrives when we mistake fleeting feelings for unshakable facts, as if the nervous flutter in your stomach before a presentation means you're incompetent, or the stumble in a conversation proves you're socially awkward. Stoics approach these mental traps with cold, surgical logic. Marcus Aurelius warned himself, "Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought, for the human spirit is colored by such impressions." In other words, the more you entertain distorted self-judgments, the more real they feel even when they're fiction. Take the thought, "I'm terrible at public speaking." Stoicism would dissect it like a scientist. Where's the evidence? Maybe you've tripped over words before, but does that erase every time you spoke clearly? Is this a permanent trait or a skill still developing? Even the greatest orators once fumbled their first speeches. What's the worst that could happen if this belief isn't true? You might realize you're capable of growth. This is Socratic questioning at work, stripping subjective fears down to objective parts, like dismantling a clock to see which gears are actually broken. Consider a musician learning a new piece. Early attempts are riddled with wrong notes, but they don't declare, "I'm bad at music." They think, "This measure needs practice." That's the shift, turning "I'm failing" into "Here's where I'm improving." Because doubt isn't a verdict, it's just noise. So grab that nagging thought you've accepted as gospel, maybe, "I'll never be organized," or "They all think I'm unqualified." Now interrogate it. What concrete examples support it? How many contradict it? The gap between those answers is where your power lies, not in silencing self-doubt, but in learning to recognize it as static, not signal. What if we've been measuring success all wrong? Imagine a world where your worth wasn't tied to promotions, likes, or flawless performances, but to something far more unshakable: the integrity of your actions. That's the Stoic North Star virtue as the sole good. Not wealth, not status, not even the outcomes of your efforts. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, put it bluntly: "In life, your first job is this: divide matters into two, what's up to you and what's not. Then focus solely on the first, and what's up to you, only one thing, your character." Picture two runners crossing a finish line. One trained honestly, pushed their limits but came in last. The other cut corners, lied about their time, and took first place. Who truly won? Stoicism would argue the first runner, because victory isn't in the medal, but in the moral fiber you bring to the race. The four cardinal virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, aren't just lofty ideals. They're daily choices. Wisdom isn't about having all the answers, it's about asking better questions. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's showing up despite it. Justice isn't grand gestures, it's how you treat the barrister who messed up your order. Temperance isn't deprivation, it's the space between craving and action where freedom lives. Think about a project you poured your heart into, maybe a creative pursuit or a work assignment that didn't land the way you hoped. The Stoic question isn't did this succeed, but did I act with integrity? Because here's the secret: when you decouple your self-worth from outcomes, anxiety loses its grip. You can't control market crashes, other people's moods, or whether your art goes viral. But you can control whether you cut ethical corners or stand firm in your values. That's the trade, trading the roller coaster of external validation for the steady ground of inner alignment. So ask yourself, when did you last choose the harder right over the easier wrong? Maybe it was returning extra change a cashier mistakenly gave you, or admitting a mistake at work when no one would have noticed. Those moments aren't small, they're the bricks building your unshakable core. Because at the end of the day, no one can take your character from you. Not a bad review, not a missed opportunity, not even failure. And that's the ultimate freedom, knowing that no matter what life throws, you've already won by playing the game well. How did Cato face betrayal without crumbling? Picture this: Rome's political arena, where alliances shifted like sand. and Cotto the Younger stood unwavering even as his closest allies turned against him. When Julius Caesar seized power, Cotto refused to bend, choosing principle over self-preservation. His defiance wasn't reckless, it was rooted in a Stoic truth. The universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it. For Cotto, betrayal wasn't a personal affront, it was an opportunity to reaffirm his values. Then there's Epictetus, who transformed enslavement into a masterclass in resilience. Torn from his homeland and crippled by a cruel master, he could have surrendered to bitterness. Instead, he taught a revolutionary idea. It's not what happens to you, but how you respond that shackles or frees you. His lectures, transcribed by a student, became the manual for turning adversity into fuel. Imagine being physically bound yet mentally unshackled. That's the Stoic paradox in action. Seneca, exiled to Corsica's harsh terrain, wrote letters that reframed suffering. Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. His exile wasn't an end, it was the birthplace of his greatest works. These figures didn't just endure, they used hardship as a whetstone to sharpen their character. What's striking isn't their stoic indifference, but their fierce engagement with life's blows, transforming each into a lesson. Now consider your own life. Who's the modern equivalent of these figures for you? Maybe it's a mentor who thrives under pressure, a co-worker who radiates calm in chaos, or even a fictional character whose quiet strength inspires you. The point isn't to compare struggles, but to borrow their lenses, to ask how would they frame this challenge, because role models aren't just icons, they're proof that the tools you're learning today have weathered centuries of storms. And if they could stand firm, so can you. What if your biggest hurdle is actually a gift in disguise, wrapped in frustration, tied with resistance, but holding something far more valuable inside? The Stoics didn't just tolerate obstacles, they saw them as the whetstone that sharpened their resolve. Marcus Aurelius put it vividly, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Think of gold purified by fire, the hotter the flame, the brighter it shines. That's antifragility in action, the idea that some things don't just endure stress but are improved by it. Consider rejection, the sting of a job application denied or a creative project passed over. In the moment, it feels like a wall. But what if that wall was placed there to redirect you toward a door you wouldn't have noticed otherwise? J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter manuscript faced 12 rejections before finding a home. Those closed doors didn't weaken the story, they forced refinements that made it undeniable. The Stoic twist, every no was secretly sculpting her resilience, teaching her to separate her worth from external validation. Or take physical training, muscles don't grow without resistance. The burn of a squat, the ache of a long run, these aren't punishments. They're signals that strength is being forged. The same applies to your mind. Anxiety, setbacks, even self-doubt, they're not signs you're failing. They're proof you're engaging with life deeply enough to be tested. So here's a challenge. Look back at a recent frustration, a missed opportunity, a criticism that stung, a plan that unraveled. Now ask, what did this reveal about my adaptability? What skill did it force me to develop? Maybe that cancelled project freed up time for something more aligned with your values. Maybe that harsh feedback exposed a blind spot you can now address. Obstacles aren't roadblocks, they're recalibrations. And the more you practice this reframe, the less life's friction wears you down, and the more it polishes you into someone who doesn't just withstand storms but learns to dance in the rain. Why did Roman soldiers, senators, and Stoic philosophers alike place such sacred importance on the rhythm of their breath? For them, breathwork wasn't just a tool, it was the bridge between body and mind, a way to anchor themselves when chaos threatened to pull them under. Cleans, the Stoic teacher who literally worked as a water carrier to support his studies, knew this intimately. Amid poverty and hardship, he cultivated a practice so powerful it became legendary. control your breath, and you control the storm within. Picture a general preparing for battle, his armor clanking as he draws one slow inhale through the nose, counting to 4, then exhales just as deliberately. That precise rhythm wasn't arbitrary. Modern science now confirms what the Stoics intuited. Deliberate breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, dialing down cortisol and sharpening focus. It's like pressing pause on a spinning record. The music of anxiety fades and clarity takes its place. Try this now before your next high-stakes moment, a difficult conversation, a tight deadline pause. Inhale deeply for 4 counts, letting your ribs expand like bellows feeding a fire. Hold for a heartbeat, then release for 4 counts as if you're letting go of sand grain by grain. Repeat 3 times. Notice how your shoulders drop, your pulse steadies, and the mental fog begins to lift. That's not just relaxation, it's you reclaiming the reins of your nervous system. The Stoics didn't wait for crisis to practice. They drilled daily, transforming breath into an instinctive refuge. Seneca described it as the invisible tether tying us to the present. Because when anxiety yanks you into the future or regret drags you into the past, your breath is always there, a silent metronome counting the beats of now. So the next time self-doubt whispers or overwhelm surges, remember, you carry an ancient weapon against chaos, and it's as simple as drawing one conscious breath, then another, until the storm inside stills to a whisper. What if you could insert a 10-second buffer between life's jabs and your gut reactions? That split second where anger flares, anxiety tightens your chest, or self-doubt whispers, that's the moment Stoics train you to hijack. They called it the discipline of assent, the art of withholding your inner yes or no until reason, not reflex, takes the wheel. Epictetus framed it brilliantly. It's not events that disturb people, but their judgments about events. In other words, between what happens and how you react, there's a hidden doorway, and stepping through it is how you break anxiety's grip. Picture this. You open an email that makes your blood boil, maybe a colleague's passive-aggressive comment or a client's unreasonable demand. Your fingers fly to the keyboard, poised to fire back, but wait, here's where the Stoic pause kicks in. You close the laptop, walk around the block, maybe even sleep on it. By the time you revisit that draft, something shifts. The sting has dulled. The words that felt urgent now seem petty. That's the power of creating space, not to suppress emotion, but to let it settle like sediment in water, so you can respond from clarity, not chaos. The science backs this up. Neurologically, emotional reactions peak within seconds, then gradually subside. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, sounds the siren, but your prefrontal cortex, the rational CEO, needs a moment to catch up. The Stoic pause is literally buying time for your higher brain to weigh in. Think of it like a negotiator stepping between 2 arguing parties, refusing to let either side escalate prematurely. Try this experiment today. Identify one trigger that typically yanks your chain: a certain tone from a family member, a traffic jam, even the ping of a notification. Next time it happens, freeze, literally count to 10 in your head. Notice the urge to react rise and then fall like a wave receding. That tiny gap, that's where your freedom lies. Because every time you stretch that pause even a second longer, you're rewiring your brain's default settings, training it to see triggers as invitations to choose, not commands to obey. So ask yourself, what's the one situation where you most often regret your instant reaction? The argument you fueled without meaning to, the snap judgment that cost you an opportunity. That's your training ground, because mastery isn't about never feeling provoked, it's about remembering, in the heat of the moment, that you hold the power to pause. And in that pause lies the quiet revolution of reclaiming your mind. How did Seneca prepare his mind for sleep? Not with endless scrolling or tossing over tomorrow's to-do list, but with something far simpler, a nightly dialogue with himself. Picture this, the oil lamp flickering as he'd retrace the day's steps, not to dwell on missteps, but to distill wisdom from them. The day is over, he'd write. What did I learn? Where did I act with courage? And where did fear steer me? This wasn't self-interrogation. It was a gentle unpacking, like brushing sand from your clothes after a long walk. The goal, to lay down the mental weight before laying down his head. Marcus Aurelius took this further in his private journal, posing blunt questions to untangle the day's knots. What useless habit did I reinforce today? What evidence proves I'm worse off than yesterday? Brutal, maybe, but beneath the sharpness was a profound kindness, the recognition that growth begins with honest reckoning. His prompts weren't designed to shame, they were tools to separate signal from noise. Try this tonight. Divide a page into 2 columns. On the left, note one thing you navigated well, maybe patience with a frustrating coworker or resisting an unhealthy impulse. On the right, jot one area for refinement, not failure but feedback. The shift from "I messed up" to "I'm learning" changes everything. Modern science echoes what Stoics knew. The brain processes the day's experiences during sleep. When you journal with intention, you're essentially curating what gets filed away, highlighting lessons while releasing clutter. Think of it like tidying a workspace before leaving the office. You return to order, not chaos. So tonight, before you reach for your phone or dive into tomorrow's worries, steal 5 minutes with a notebook. Ask, what's one moment today that revealed my strength? One friction point that's inviting me to grow. Then close the book literally and figuratively, trusting that tomorrow's clarity starts with tonight's quiet reflection. The Romans called this vespertina reflectio, evening's gentle audit, but you might just call it the oldest form of therapy, 1 page at a time. Would Seneca spend hours scrolling through curated snapshots of other people's lives, polished vacations, staged achievements, the endless highlight reel designed to provoke envy? Hardly. The Stoics understood something we're just now grasping. Your mental diet is as critical as the food you eat. Epictetus warned, the mind is colored by the impressions it allows in, guard them like a fortress gate. Every tweet, every comparison-laden post, every notification is an impression knocking at that gate. And when you let them pile up unchecked, they don't just pass through, they move in, reshaping your sense of worth. Consider the modern irony. We've never had more connection, yet loneliness and self-doubt spike. Why? Because social media doesn't just reflect reality. It refracts it, bending perceptions until you start measuring your behind the scenes against everyone else's premiere. A Stoic social detox isn't about rejecting technology. It's about reclaiming sovereignty over what gets your attention. Take 1 week away from platforms. Not as a deprivation experiment, but as a revelation. Notice what happens when you stop feeding the algorithm your insecurities. The silence might feel jarring at first, like stepping out of a noisy room. But soon, you'll hear something you'd forgotten, your own voice. Here's the litmus test. Pick one digital input. Maybe the app where you habitually compare your career path, or the account that leaves you feeling lacking. Ask yourself, does this sharpen my clarity or scatter it? If it's the latter, that's not a guilty pleasure, it's mental pollution. The Stoics categorized external things as indifference, not inherently good or bad, but neutral until assigned value. Your phone, neutral. The way you use it, that's where the power lies. So try this. For the next 48 hours, mute that one trigger source. Not forever, just long enough to spot the difference in your mental weather. You might find the sky was never as cloudy as you thought. You'd just been staring at someone else's filter. What if your self-talk was a wise mentor instead of a relentless critic? The words you whisper to yourself in quiet moments aren't just passing thoughts, they're chisels, shaping the bedrock of your beliefs. Stoic affirmations aren't about slapping a smile over pain or chanting empty platitudes. They're grounded mantras forged in the fire of reality, designed to reroute your subconscious away from self-doubt and toward unshakable truth. Marcus Aurelius didn't journal, "Everything will be perfect tomorrow." He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That's the key difference between toxic positivity and Stoic realism. One ignores the storm, while the other teaches you to stand steady within it. Take the phrase, "This too shall pass." It doesn't deny suffering, it contextualizes it. Ancient traders carried this wisdom along the Silk Road, etching it into rings as a reminder. No emotion, no crisis, no triumph is permanent. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Repetition rewires neural pathways, turning borrowed wisdom into lived instinct. Try this. Next time anxiety whispers, "I can't handle this," pause. Replace it with, "I've handled harder before." Feel the shift. One version collapses your shoulders, the other straightens them. Here's the twist. Stoic affirmations work best when they're active, not passive. "I control my effort, not outcomes," isn't a wish, it's a compass. Imagine two students awaiting test results. One mutters, "I hope I passed," tying their worth to the grade. The other recalls, "I prepared with integrity," anchoring themselves in what they influenced. Both may feel nervous, but only the second has a lifeline to cling to when the waves rise. Your turn. Grab a scrap of paper and craft a Stoic mantra for your current challenge. Not a generic "I am strong," but a precise truth. "Discomfort is the price of growth" for gym anxiety, or "My worth isn't decided by one conversation" for social doubt. Write it where you'll see it daily: your phone lock screen, the bathroom mirror. Then, when the old script of self-doubt starts playing, you'll have a wiser voice ready to speak over it. Because the most powerful dialogue you'll ever have isn't with critics or cheerleaders, it's the one you're having right now, inside your own mind. And today, you get to rewrite the script. How did the Stoics view mistakes? Not as failures to agonize over, but as raw material for growth, necessary data points in the lifelong experiment of becoming wiser. Seneca put it plainly, "The man who has fallen and gotten back up is stronger than the one who never stumbled." Think about that for a second. The very act of tripping, then rising, builds a resilience that flawless performance never could. Imagine an athlete who skips training because they can't execute every rep perfectly. Over time, their perfect avoidance leaves them weaker than the one who shows up consistently, even on messy days. This isn't just philosophical optimism, it's neurological fact. Every time you attempt something challenging, whether it's public speaking, learning a language, or navigating a tough conversation, your brain rewires itself based on feedback. But here's the catch. If you interpret setbacks as proof of inadequacy instead of stepping stones, you short-circuit the learning process. Perfectionism isn't high standards, it's a fear of feedback dressed up as virtue. Take something as simple as a workout where you cut the routine short. The all-or-nothing voice whispers, "You didn't finish, so it doesn't count." But Stoicism asks, "Did you move? Did you show up?" Even 5 minutes of effort isn't zero. It's a deposit in the bank of discipline. Now zoom out. Where else does this binary thinking trap you? Maybe you abandon a creative project because the first draft isn't brilliant, or avoid applying for a role unless you meet every arbitrary qualification. Each time, you're not protecting your perfection, you're forfeiting progress. So here's the invitation. Grab your mental magnifying glass and spot one area where you're clinging to impossible standards. Is it your parenting, your productivity, the way you think you should have life figured out by now? Now, try on Seneca's lens. No tree becomes rooted and sturdy unless it's buffeted by constant wind. Your stumbles aren't proof you're falling behind, they're the very forces that help you stand taller. The goal isn't to erase imperfections, but to recognize them as the gritty texture that gives your growth traction. After all, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor, and neither does a life without missteps create an unshakable mind. Why did Stoics gather in schools when they could have practiced alone? Because wrestling with life's toughest questions is like trying to lift a boulder possible solo, but far easier with others sharing the load. Musonius Rufus, the teacher who mentored Epictetus, saw this clearly. Just as a single log burns poorly alone but catches fire quickly among others, so too does the mind sharpen best in fellowship. Stoicism wasn't designed as a solitary pursuit. It thrived in shared spaces where ideas could clash, refine, and ignite. Think of it like a mental gym. You might lift weights alone, but spotting each other ensures no one gets crushed under the weight of their own assumptions. Take a modern book club dissecting Meditations. One member highlights Marcus Aurelius' resilience in grief, another connects it to their recent loss, while a third challenges the group. But how do we reconcile Stoic acceptance with modern therapy's emphasis on processing emotion? Suddenly, ancient text isn't just theory, it's a living dialogue where perspectives cross-pollinate. That's the alchemy of community. Individual insights compound, revealing blind spots you'd never notice in isolation. Accountability works the same way. Ever committed to a habit, journaling, meditation, Premeditatio Malorum, only to let it slide when no one's watching? A Stoic peer isn't there to judge, they're the mirror reflecting your growth back to you. Like Seneca exchanging letters with Lucilius, these relationships create gentle pressure to practice what you preach. So ask yourself, who in your orbit could be that sounding board? Maybe it's a coworker who thrives under pressure, a friend navigating a tough chapter, or even an online forum where strangers dissect Epictetus over coffee. The form doesn't matter, only the shared intention to grow wiser together. Reach out this week with a simple question. How would you apply Stoicism to your current challenge? You might just find that the philosophy's deepest lessons reveal themselves not in quiet contemplation, but in the messy, beautiful exchange of lived experience. Because while wisdom starts within, it's polished through friction like stones in a river tumbling together toward clarity. What's the first story you tell yourself when your eyes open? Before your fingers reach for the phone, before the day's demands start shouting, there's a silent space where you choose whether to greet the morning with intention or surrender to chaos. Marcus Aurelius knew this well. His dawn ritual wasn't about productivity hacks or cramming more into his hours. It was a mental armor fitting. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. That's the Stoic secret. Mornings aren't just for coffee and calendars. They're your daily chance to reset your relationship with the world. Picture two versions of your waking moments. One, groggy, grabbing your device, diving straight into emails or social media, letting other people's agendas colonize your mind before you've even stretched your legs. The other, sitting up, taking 3 deliberate breaths and asking, what's one thing within my control today? That 5-second pause is the difference between reacting to life and directing it. Ancient Stoics called this premeditatio, the practice of envisioning challenges before they arrive, not to dread them, but to drain their power to surprise you. Try this experiment tomorrow. Keep a notebook by your bed. Before you check a single notification, write one sentence answering, what quality do I want to embody today? Maybe it's patience during your commute, focus in a meeting, or kindness when you're tired. That's not goal setting, it's identity setting. You're not listing tasks, you're declaring who you'll become before the world starts making its demands. Roman households often began the day with salutatio, a ritual greeting where patrons and clients exchanged mutual respect. Your modern version, a 2-minute mental salute to the day ahead. Close your eyes and visualize 3 potential friction points, maybe a tense call, a crowded train, or a project deadline. Now rehearse your Stoic response. If X happens, I'll remember Y. Not as a script, but as a compass. When the moment arrives, your mind won't be scrambling, it'll recognize the terrain. So here's your invitation. Design one tiny morning habit that serves as your anchor. It could be reciting Epictetus' reminder, "Today I'll meet interference, ingratitude, arrogance, but none of these things can harm me," while brushing your teeth. Or jotting down 3 things you'll not complain about today. The form doesn't matter, the ritual does, because how you start your morning isn't just about the first hour, it's about who you'll be by the time your head hits the pillow again. Did you know Seneca wrote letters joking about his exile? Not the reaction you'd expect from a man banished to a remote island, forced to trade philosophy for harsh winds and solitude. Yet there he was, mocking the poor quality of local wine and quipping that the scenery was almost as dull as my critics. This wasn't deflection, it was defiance. The Stoics understood a radical truth. Humor isn't just a distraction from hardship, it's a lens that shrinks problems down to size. Epictetus put it bluntly, when faced with a setback, ask yourself, will this matter in 100 years? If not, why not laugh now? Think of a time your phone slipped into a puddle or you tripped in public. In the moment, it felt like the universe had it out for you, but later it became a story, maybe even one that made friends laugh. That shift from frustration to laughter isn't trivial, it's a cognitive superpower. When you find irony in a mishap, you're not denying the inconvenience. You're refusing to let it hijack your peace. Ancient Stoics saw this as mental jiu-jitsu, using the weight of adversity to flip your perspective. Consider the modern equivalent, a cancelled flight leaving you stranded overnight. You could rage at the airline, or you could embrace the absurdity. Guess I'm camping at gate B12. Do vending machines count as room service? The situation hasn't changed, but your suffering evaporates the moment you choose to see the humor in it. So here's a challenge. Pick one recent disaster that felt overwhelming at the time: a burnt dinner, a missed train, a botched presentation. Now picture explaining it to a friend 5 years from now. What details would seem hilariously inconsequential? That gap between today's crisis and tomorrow's punchline, that's where Stoic lightness lives. Because sometimes the most profound wisdom isn't a solemn meditation, it's the ability to laugh when life hands you lemons and then realizes it forgot the sugar. How many tabs are open in your mind right now? Not just on your browser, those endless articles you'll get to later, but the mental tabs, unread notifications piling up, the half-finished project guilting you from your desk, the social media feed whispering you're falling behind. This isn't just distraction, it's cognitive overload, and the Stoics had an antidote long before the digital age: subtraction. Seneca urged his followers to conduct regular inventories of their lives, asking, how much of what surrounds you is necessary? How much is noise disguised as value? That scroll through your phone first thing in the morning, does it serve you? Or does it set your nerves alight before your feet even hit the floor? Consider the modern parallel, deleting one app for a week. Not the one you use for work or loved ones, but the one that leaves you feeling hollow after each visit. Maybe the platform where comparison creeps in, or the news source that turns your stomach into knots. At first, your thumb might hover reflexively over its absent icon, but within days something shifts. The mental space it occupied starts filling with unexpected moments. The novel you'd been meaning to read, a spontaneous conversation with a neighbor, the simple act of noticing clouds instead of comments. This isn't about rejecting technology, it's about reclaiming agency over what gets to live in your attention. Digital minimalism mirrors the Stoic discipline of desire, not by shunning tools but by scrutinizing their cost. Every app, every subscription, every notification is a trade, your focus for someone else's agenda. So try this today. Open your phone settings and check your screen time report. What's the one entry that surprises or unsettles you? That's your starting point. Now ask Seneca's question. Does this belong in my life's inventory, or is it clutter masquerading as necessity? The answer might not mean deletion forever, just a conscious choice to engage on your terms, not your phone's. Because clarity doesn't come from adding more wisdom. It comes from removing everything that isn't. How would you live if today mattered more? Not in a frantic bucket list way, but with the quiet certainty that this breath, this conversation, this ordinary Tuesday won't come again. The Stoics practiced Memento Mori, remembering death, not to dwell on darkness, but to sharpen life's edges. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do, say, and think. Notice he didn't say, "Live like there's no tomorrow." That's chaos. He said, "Let it determine," a deliberate calibration. Imagine stepping off a curb just as a speeding car barely misses you. For a heartbeat, time slows. Suddenly, the meeting you were stressing over feels trivial, and the call you've been putting off to an old friend feels urgent. That's Memento Mori in action, not fear but clarity. The deadlines and dramas that loomed large now seem like background noise, and what truly matters stands in stark relief. The Stoics didn't wait for near-death experiences to gain this perspective. They trained daily to see through life's illusions. Modern psychology echoes this. Studies show that when people reflect on mortality, not obsessively, but honestly, they're more likely to prioritize relationships over status, experiences over possessions. It's as if death, when acknowledged, becomes a compass pointing true north. Take a writer who dreams of publishing a novel but keeps postponing it for someday. Now picture them holding a single blank page with the words, "If not now, when?" That page isn't morbid, it's a mirror. Here's the twist. Memento Mori isn't about cramming more into your days. It's about subtracting the trivial. When Steve Jobs told Stanford graduates, "Death is life's change agent," he wasn't advising hustle culture. He meant that acknowledging limits dissolves excuses. So pause and ask yourself, what's one thing I'd do today if I weren't afraid of failing? Not a grand, sweeping gesture, just one email sent, one hard truth spoken, or one creative risk taken. Because the power of Memento Mori isn't in its solemnity, it's in the liberation of realizing that time's scarcity is what makes your choices sacred. Now picture a candle burning at both ends. Most of us focus on the flame, racing against its flicker. But the Stoics would tell you to focus on the light it casts, the warmth it offers while it lasts. That's the shift from counting down days to making the days count. And the paradox, when you stop pretending you have forever, you start living like you actually do. Every tool we've explored, the razor-sharp focus on what you control, the defiant embrace of Amor Fati, the clarifying power of journaling, even the ancient breathwork practices, these aren't just ideas. They're your daily mental armor, forged over centuries to help you stand firm when self-doubt whispers and anxiety storms. None of these promise a life without challenges, but each one offers something far more valuable: the certainty that difficulty doesn't have to mean defeat. Epictetus, who transformed his own suffering into strength, left us with this piercing truth: first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. That's the heart of Stoicism, not passive acceptance but active alignment. Declare the person you're choosing to become, then let your actions etch that declaration into reality. Here's your challenge. Pick one practice this week, just one. Maybe it's the Stoic pause before reacting to a trigger, or the evening journaling ritual to unpack the day's lessons. Observe what shifts. Does the morning feel different when you start it with intention? Does frustration lose its edge when you greet it with Amor Fati? This isn't about perfection, it's about noticing. Because transformation doesn't happen in grand declarations, it happens in the quiet accumulation of small, consistent choices. Before you go, tell me this, which tactic resonated most? Was it the mental fire drill of Premeditatio Malorum, or the perspective-shifting view from above? Drop a comment below, because the real magic happens when we learn from each other's battles. Your experience might be the lifeline someone else needs to hear. And remember, anxiety and self-doubt are visitors, not residents. You get to decide how long they stay. Now go claim your peace. The tools are in your hands. Use